ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of our program, The Daily Debate. I'm Yasmin Bakir, and this evening I'm going to be filling in my colleague's seat, Mona Mselhi, who's off today. So we're going to be talking today about the new Suez Canal as we are celebrating this month the anniversary, or the 4th anniversary of the new Suez Canal. A lot of people might not be very much aware of the importance of this canal, and we hear numbers and revenues being multiplied and profits, and nobody really understands what these numbers mean or what they're interpreted into, and how behind or under the umbrella of this new Suez Canal lies a lot of people, hard work and planning, international consultants, those with vast experiences, and how systematically is this process being worked out, and what does it mean, this new canal, or the geographic position of the canal on the Red Sea? What does it mean to Egypt, and how is it really a gateway economically to the entire world? So we have a very interesting guest today. He's going to be shedding light on a lot of issues. Got a chance to speak to him right before air, and I'm very much impressed. So there's so much new information that I believe you wouldn't easily find anywhere, reading even articles online. I've even mentioned that to him. So I'm going to introduce him first before we start with our top stories. Very delighted to have joining me this evening Engineer Sherine Al-Naggar, who's an international transport consultant. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. And I'm very interested to know more and get the viewers to know more about the Suez Canal as an umbrella, of course, but there's so much depth, and we're going to indulge into that. But bear with us as we're going to start off first with what's heading the top stories this evening. And taking a look at President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who had expressed his deep appreciation to the people and the government of Japan for hosting the 7th Tokyo International Conference on the African Development, the TICAD Yokohama of 2019, which is stated to take place on August the 28th and 30th. He also noted that the TICAD has been, since its launch back in 1993, one of the key forums of various partners in support for Africa and the development aspirations. So we're going to be knowing more about the importance of this conference. How can it sort of bring in together, further strengthen cooperation between Africa and Japan, which is one of the leading economic powers in the world, and the resources in Africa. And as of course Egypt is heading the African Union presidency, how can Egypt also be able to lead the way or pave the way for the African continent in the upcoming period in light of such a conference? Now, to shed further light on the TICAD summit, the 7th TICAD summit, we are joined over the phone by Mr. Ayub, Mahmoud Ayub, who's an economic expert. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
I would like to know about, how do you assess the convention of the 7th TICAD summit, and what does that mean, of course, for the African continent?
TICAD 7, which will be held in Tokyo from 28th, so this month, is a very important one. It is the 7th in this process since several years back, and now we are having it this year when President Sisi is presiding over the Union. TICAD 7 and TICAD as a whole is a very important process as far as the development of Africa is concerned. When we say development of Africa, we mean development of Africa in cooperation with the foreign countries. One of the major economic powers in the world now is Japan. There is difference between Japan and other countries with whom Africa, under the chairmanship of Egypt this year, is concerned. That is, Japan is not. We are not so sensitive when we are dealing with Japan. I would not compare to the United States or China, for example. Japan, when they are cooperating in development, in technology transfer, and raising the standard of living of the countries in respect. This year, we have Egypt presiding over the African Union, and we are having this conference now in TICAD in Japan, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan published the message of President Sisi to highlight the importance not only of the conference, but also of who is presiding over it. Many areas of interest are there between Egypt, Africa, and Japan. This triangle of power, of cooperation, and of active sponsorship of development projects in African continent. Egypt has one more point in that is relative advantage is that we have many preferential trade and economic agreements with all the African blocs and African countries. That is to say that Egypt is a good gate to Africa for Japan to think of. This is one part. Other part is that Egypt for the Japan is a stable country, and it has very good relations in its area of interest, of area of influence, if I can say that. So Japan has every interest in cooperating with Egypt to be a vehicle to many African countries who trust Egyptian and Japanese friendship as far as development process is concerned. This is one thing. Other thing is that many African students and African scientists, I can say, and scholars, go to Japan to study and come back to their countries to transfer what they have seen, or transfer technology, or transfer the know-how of Japan to the African countries, which African countries badly need now. If we look to Rwanda or Burundi now, and how they developed very fast using the information technology as a very good project, and now they are leading the way in this respect. Egypt is in a very, very good position to help African countries and to be the catalyst for all development and investment projects between Japan and Egypt. This will reflect on, first, bilateral relations between Egypt and each and every African country in 53 countries of Africa. Second, between Egypt and Japan. Third, also the standing of Egypt in the international fora. That is, Egypt is a hub for development, a hub for investment, and a hub for mutually beneficial economic cooperation with African countries and foreign countries. When I say foreign countries, I mean Japan in this respect.
Yes,
so it is important phase of cooperation, and this happens when Egypt is presiding over the African Union, and it will be one of the main components of the success, this creating new areas of interest and new areas of cooperation. I mean with cooperation, especially the economic and transfer of technology from Japan to African countries. And we are in much need to this kind of cooperation today and tomorrow. And Egypt is in a good position to play in this ground because we have the scientists, we have the know-how, we have experience in this respect, and as I earlier mentioned, we have many or several preferential trade and economic agreements with all the African blocs and the African countries, which will enable us to not penetrate, but rather to cooperate with the African countries.
Yes, very well. Mr. Ayub Mahmoud Ayub, economic expert, thank you very much, of course, for this very important information and for joining us on the Daily Debate this evening. Thank you very much. Now, going back to our topic today, the anniversary, the 4th anniversary of the new Suez Canal, and to know more about the importance, the strategic location, logistics, and a lot of projects that must be underlining this very important canal. Let's take a look at this report. As the Suez Canal breaks records and revenues transfers to Egypt at 72.2 billion Egyptian pounds to the state treasury. What does that mean, and how is this number being interpreted? That's what our report's going to tell us.
Under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, success stories all over Egypt.
مصر في انتظار المزيد من العمل والإنتاج.
New Suez Canal. Developing Sinai. Building on our strength.
القوات المسلحة مسؤولة عن الأمن القومي لمصر.
Building new cities. New social housing projects.
احنا بنعمل أمر التاريخ هيتوقف قدامه كتير.
Developing slum areas. Egypt's leading role, regionally and internationally. Supporting women empowerment. Engaging the youth.
قيام رئاسة الجمهورية بالتنسيق مع جميع أجهزة الدولة نحو عقد مؤتمر شهري للشباب.
Supporting national industries.
احنا بنتكلم كلام بجد عشان نبني بلد.
Upgrading infrastructure.
الغاز اللي احنا محتاجينه هيتم تدبيره من عندنا هنا من مصر. مصر تستحق منكم اللي ادتكم على مدى آلاف السنين ما أنتم فيه.
Together, we make change.
The Finance Ministry said that the Suez Canal Authority has provided the State Treasury with 72.2 billion Egyptian pounds in the 2018-2019 fiscal year. The ministry added in a statement that the figure is historically the highest. The total revenues have recorded a remarkable increase, reaching 104.3 billion Egyptian pounds in the 2018-2019 fiscal year, compared to 74.2 billion Egyptian pounds 2 years ago, with a growth rate of 40.4%. The revenues of the strategic canal recorded a yearly growth rate of 5.4% in fiscal year 2018-2019, reaching $5.9 billion in the last year from $5.6 billion in fiscal year 2017-2018. Head of the Suez Canal Authority at the time, Vice Admiral Mohab Mamish, said that the canal achieved a record in this month when 81 vessels passed through it at a total cargo of 6.1 million tons in one day. He noted that new development projects and upgrading of the canal helped improve its performance and achieve these revenues. Also, the new Suez Canal contributed to increasing the revenues of the waterway. This came in new head of the Suez Canal Authority, Vice Admiral Hussein Rabia, said that Monday witnessed the passage of 45 vessels in both ways at a total cargo of 2.7 million tons. The canal was able over the past 4 years to achieve the largest containers in the world. The time of passage through the canal went down to 11 hours. It was 22 hours before setting up the new canal. The Suez Canal is a major maritime shipping route for the world trade movement and a key element in achieving the national development goals in Egypt.
تحية تقدير واحترام لبطل حقيقي. البطل ده هو مصر وشعبها. الحكاية مش حكاية لا حكومة ولا قيادة، ده حكاية كل مواطن في مصر. أكرمت مصر وشرفت مصر وعزيت مصر. انتم قتلتم. فالشرف كل الشرف والكرامة كل الكرامة والفضل كل الفضل لله سبحانه وتعالى، ثم ليكم انتم. شرفتوني واكرمتموني وعزتوني ورفعتوا راسي قدام الدنيا كلها باللي انتم عملتوه. والله 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 لن يستطيع اي رئيس يقف مكاني هنا انه يقدر يعمل حاجه بدونكم. لن يستطيع. قصه وطن يتحدث عن نفسه. شعب أراد الحياة فاستجاب له القدر.
Welcome back again. You're still watching us here on the Daily Debate this evening. Very much delighted to have joining me engineer Sherine and Naggar, an international transport consultant. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Pardon me for the for waiting. Yeah. So this is the 4th anniversary, of course, of the inauguration of the new Suez Canal.
Yes.
We were having a chit-chat before we went on air, and I asked you, what does it mean to have a new Suez Canal, and How important is it? Because a lot of people just think it was, all right, it was built and digged in 11 months at a project that would originally take up to 5 years. But what? Then what?
Well, before I answer your question, I'd just like to make a comment. During the crisis of Egypt, during the revolution and the terrorist activities and all the problems we have encountered between 2010 and 2015 when the Suez Canal was opened, I am very proud, even as an Egyptian, to say there was not a stoppage or a single delay to a single ship during those very high crisis in Egypt, and Egypt was in a very, very serious crisis situation at the time. And then after that came the digging or the expansion of the Suez Canal into a double channel in some areas. And I must also say that during the visit of the International Chamber of Shipping delegation, 1 week before the Suez Canal was opened, or the new Suez Canal inauguration was, all the experts, and I say that the delegation included some of the top engineers in the world in the maritime sector. Everybody agreed that this project should never be completed before 5 years. Proudly and very proudly, the Egyptians have completed this project in 11 months. And to both the security of the Suez Canal during the revolution crisis in Egypt and the miraculous engineering job done, I think we owe a lot of tribute to Admiral Mohab Mamish, who is just handing over his post to another post. Admiral Mamish, you have served your country very, very well, and it really has been an honor for me to work with you, and I think you have been a very dedicated Egyptian, being in the Navy or being on the head of the Suez Canal Authority. Chapeau and best of luck for your new post.
You've done a lot of
Admiral
hard
Sherine.
work during the past period.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, and that's the thing, because this is the 4th anniversary, so if we were going to be taking the normal steps of achieving this project, as you have said correctly, according to the international standards, 5 years, so just around about to have inaugurated it today or after a couple of months. We've seen revenues, maybe we just aired a report that speaks about over 72 billion Egyptian pounds in revenues for such a project. But for the normal ordinary citizen who's not very much aware, at least from a geographic perspective, on the importance of this canal, what does these numbers interpret into? So what does these revenues mean? Why did the president and his team insist on finishing this project in 11 months? Where are we today from this inauguration?
Well, we are quite a distance ahead, because if we hadn't done this canal, we have not done this expansion project, the canal transit volume was in the region of 25, 30 ships a day. Now we are over 60 ships a day, so we have doubled our traffic. The Suez Canal, as it was put at the time, the Suez Canal is the gift of Egypt to the world rather than a gift of the world to Egypt, because the users have benefited a lot more from the new Suez Canal than Egypt has itself. When you come to say the potential, no, the potential, we are only at the threshold. The Egyptian potential is colossal, is phenomenal, and I don't think any Egyptian can dream high enough to reach the potential of this country. I mean, that would take a long time to explain all this, but generally speaking, we have a phenomenal potential as a transport hub, as a maritime hub, as a Suez Canal. For example, the Suez Canal today is turning in a revenue of 72 billion Egyptian pounds. In a couple of years, with some adjustments to customs laws, some adjustments to local regulations and charges and tariffs and things like that, and some legal or some administrative reorganization, I think Egypt inside 5 years can become the world's biggest transport hub. And I say that and I repeat, Egypt is qualified to become the biggest transport hub in the world. Let us face it, after all, Egypt is the biggest transit hub in the world already because of the Suez Canal. But we are not making much use of our location because of a lot of red tape, old regulations which are not really matching today's requirements of the maritime industry.
Yes.
Maritime industry is very dynamic. A lot of people say, oh, how a ship is going to take a month getting from A to B, while a plane takes it in 1 hour. Yes, fine, but the shipping is a very dynamic business.
Yes, not just is the shipping very dynamic, but the maritime transport as a whole is also very dynamic and very competing. We were also talking before we went on air about means of sort of making a better use of the strategic location or positioning of the Suez Canal. We spoke of, or you've mentioned something which I have never heard before, and I'm sure a lot of viewers are not aware of, the Project 675, and I, sarcastically said, what does that stand? Is that like a bank account number? Is it a birthday date? What is it? Project 675, we're talking about 5 major consultants internationally who are there to develop the Suez Canal, if I correctly understood. But this is your chance to tell us, what is this project about? And I need to know what these numbers stand for as well.
Well, Project 675 is a group of consultants, of international shipping consultants. Each is responsible, or each is specialized in a certain area of transport. It doesn't have to be just Suez Canal or maritime transport or rail systems or anything. But actually, Project 675 is developed as a consultancy group that will provide support and will provide finance and will provide project development to create Egypt as the world's biggest transport and maritime hub. To give you an example, amongst our team, and I'm honored to say I'm a member of Project 675, is a gentleman who has spent his life in rail services. And the idea is to try and see how to develop the Suez Canal economic zone with the Suez Canal transit facility, the Suez Canal Authority, as well as integrate that with all the various projects that are taking place inland and on Egyptian ports.
All right, and I believe you've mentioned the Silk Route.
That's right, yes. The Silk Route is actually not one route. It is a one belt and one road. The road is the maritime road, which is, I don't know if they have the maps sitting here.
Yes, I would kindly hope if the director would put on screen the map of, because it's very important for people to see geographically where this stays. Yes, you can just explain as well until they do so.
Well, the road is actually the maritime road, which goes from China and steaming around India, going to the Arabian Gulf, and then going to East Africa, and then proceeding through the Red Sea.
You were talking about, this part is the southern part of the belt at first?
No, this is not the belt. This is the road I'm talking about now.
All right.
And the road starts, as I said, from China by sea. This is a sea road. It's a maritime road. And it goes through the Suez Canal. Now, the existence of the Suez Canal along the road is extremely important because this makes it automatically amplifies the role of the Suez Canal as a major maritime hub. So when you have the Suez Canal economic zone only along the banks of the Suez Canal, that means that you have a very big potential for developing industry, for developing transit industries, for developing intermediate industries within the Suez Canal, because it's served maritime by the Suez Canal. Now, when you come to the belt is something different. The belt is a transport by land, what you call surface transport. Transport goes from, at the moment, goes from Shanghai, from Shenzhen, from various destinations in China, and it goes all the way across the north, passing through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all the Caucasian countries, then Russia, and then Eastern Europe, and then
south.
ends up, No, it doesn't go south. This is where we come in. It doesn't go south. It ends up in Barcelona. One route ends up in Barcelona. One road ends up in Stettin in Poland. Another road ends up in Hamburg. And a road ends up in Barking in England.
All right. What happens? How do you connect them then to the south if you want to make it a small world?
Europe has got a very efficient rail system. And the idea or the project is to connect Piraeus, which is part of the European network, to Egypt, to Alexandria.
All right.
Now, we are talking all the time about the problems we have with the natural rail systems, and our rail network is not very efficient. Well, that's all very well and good, but it's there.
It's there,
and
yes.
it is usable. So we are not going to need to expand money, or not to need to spend so much money in developing a new rail track. No,
Yes,
we have a rail track.
you just need to renovate what you have.
Well, you can build it up slowly. And if you have that rail track coming across from Alexandria and connecting the various new points. I mean, yesterday only the president was inaugurating something massive with the agriculture and the protected agriculture.
Yes.
Was it the day before yesterday?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is one thing that the president has shown, that you have new Elminia, new Asyut,
new cities, yes.
All these new cities are already connected by rail anyway.
Yes.
So
they have better,
can
stronger infrastructure, of course. That's why they're new cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that the infrastructure is there. So what you really need to do is connect that infrastructure with the Silk,
So
with
they're
the
not
belt.
isolated new cities at the end of the day.
They are not. They are already not
them.
isolated. But if you have them, they will not just be nationally connected. No, but you can connect Asyut with Shanghai. You can connect Asyut with, you know, if you, to Riyadh. The potential, the actual opportunities are phenomenal. I can spend a week telling you how much we can do with a connection like this. Now, this, by the aim of Project 675 is to develop how we can build up this network that will be not competing with the Suez Canal, because there has been a lot of voices saying, oh, but that is competing with the Suez Canal, it's a threat to the Suez Canal. It is a complement to the Suez Canal. It is a support to the Suez Canal. Why? Because the Suez Canal is handling ships of sizes with 20,000 TEUs, 20,000 containers, 22,000 containers. They drop bulk into the zone, and the zone is actually developed or designed to become an industrial area.
Yes,
so you're getting components. Talk about easy cars, for example. Admiral Mamish has signed a protocol with Mercedes-Benz to return and manufacture, assemble their cars in the economic zone.
Yes.
Now, if you are saying that I'm going to bring in 1,000 containers with parts, with car components.
And then what? How am I going to transport them if I don't, if I don't merge in and connect with the railway systems?
Exactly. And this is exactly what you have. You have the bulk coming into the Suez Canal and through the economic zone. It gets manufactured, it gets split, and then the smaller parts get distributed through the belt or through the rail network. So this is a complement. I mean, the potential, the opportunities, the projects are phenomenal. I mean, you cannot count them. You cannot count them. And one of our colleagues has been saying that the ceiling of the wish list of dreams in Egypt, it can go as high as it could, but the potential is even higher.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true. But going back again, so what I understand is that Project 675 is designed and established particularly to develop the Suez Canal zone. Is that true?
No.
It was there after the inauguration. It was never there before Project 675?
No.
But you haven't told me what it stands for up until now.
Oh, well, that's
it's
just a code.
It is.
It's just a code, yes.
It's an important code.
Now, Project 675...
Sounds like Area 51.
Oh, there
what is that about?
Here we have the maps finally on the...
Yes, finally, here's the map. Now it makes more sense. Now explain to us how is that going to be helpful.
You can see everything, all the routes that are on the sea. This is the road, and all the green tracks. This is the...
It's the Silk Route, you said.
It's the South Route. Well, the South Route is not here, unfortunately. They've actually, unfortunately displayed the wrong map. But fair enough. But you can see.
So what does we understand what the green lines mean? What does the red line mean? Because that's going across the water, so it's going to require maritime business.
It's a maritime transport business, which goes where the Chinese used to go with their silk. That's why they call it the Silk Route.
Yes.
And they go, merchants, they go with the silk into India, and then they go the spice route also, because the Indians have got the spice route, which is something similar to the Silk Route, but in our case, India is famous for spice and so on. So the route is very simple, and it ends up in Europe, in southern Europe, in Italy. That is the road. Now the belt is slightly different. Unfortunately, this is the wrong map with the belt, so it's not really very explicit here. But
we're talking about, if we're going to talk about numbers and trades, just at least in a roughly figure, all right? We see this gateway of the Suez Canal. And if we want to say about the movement of how much time condensing can it be if you develop the Suez Canal area in terms of time, in terms of cost to other countries, instead of, like, as you said, well, even if they go by plane, by the way, it's going to take it's going to cost a lot. And you're going to be requiring to take a number of planes to reach a number of destinations. So it's the same thing, right?
That is very true. But you see, when you're talking about the bulk, if you're talking about manufacturing is one thing. If you're talking about export, Egypt today is producing a lot of fresh produce. And traditionally, we are moving it through containers, and the containers go off to Europe, and then they get distributed inland. This process takes about 10 days. If we do the same process through the rail, it will take 72 hours. So you are producing your fresh produce on shelf. You have a longer shelf life. You have a much better, much more efficient means of transport, and you can export goods which you are not able to export. Now this makes more.
Yes, tell us about the red lines, tell us about the blue lines, what do they stand for?
Okay, the blue line is the maritime law.
Oh, that's great.
That's very nice.
You're speaking, yes, here it's back
the
again.
The blue line is the maritime. The blue line is the road.
All right.
And the red line...
The blue line is the road?
The blue line is the road, and the red line is the belt. But the belt has been extended. It goes all the way further up north, and it goes all the way to Europe on the other side. So the red line would proceed north of the Caspian Sea and north of the Black Sea. It goes all the way out to Europe, to Western Europe.
Let's talk about Egypt being there. How does that help?
Now you can see that little red link there on the Egyptian map. You can see the blue road, and there is a small red strap.
Yes, what does that mean?
That red strap means the intersection or the meeting point between the belt and the road. And if the Chinese are saying we have one belt, one road initiative, the only place in the world where those two meet is Egypt.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's exactly what gives Egypt a massive potential, because you are multiplying the big mass production equipment into smaller distributable equipment, as you call, in shipping we call it either container loads or less than container loads.
Okay.
And you have the two. The only place qualified to do that is Egypt. And imagine if you are going to be able to link the two together and build up the various phases, how the Suez Canal can be complemented by the belt, by the southern belt.
So this is like a very good, vivid example of how this is actually truly complementing and not competing.
Exactly.
Because people's ignorance and lack of knowledge, maybe that's why it was very important to preview a map, is to explain to people that not everything that you hear makes sense. And if people by nature don't understand anything about the maritime world or the transport system, this is going to give them a better clarification of how important this canal is.
Definitely.
And how important is developing
Definitely.
the canal is.
Definitely.
What has, I mean, we've also been talking before you went on air, and you've been doing this job for about over 40 years. I'm sure you have a lot of experience to reflect here, and I'm sure the episode's time's not going to be enough, but Project 675 seems to be a very special project to you. And there's definitely a reason why it is. So if we're going to talk about reflecting back, what was the maritime life and transport system in Egypt before and after the Suez Canal, or before the revolution and after the revolution. What can you tell us about the steps and the leap of steps that have been taken towards a positive, better economic system?
Well, I made a comment at one stage. It is indeed, yes. I made a comment some years ago about the maritime transport sector in Egypt as being an orphan and with no parents, which is very unfortunate and was very unfortunate. Now the attention is being focused by the new administration that this is something very important. It started with the Suez Canal being developed. And it started with various other projects. There is a big project now in line, which is to create a master plan for all Egyptian ports and how to integrate Egyptian ports together to keep them to complement each other rather than compete with each other. You have a lot of potential within the Suez Canal area and within Egypt generally, especially with the gas findings that we have. A lot of ships are now becoming more and more dependent on gas. They are gas propelled, they're gas powered. So more and more ships are going to be using gas rather than fuel. There is a lot of restrictions on using dirty fuels like heavy fuel, oil, liquid dirty
if
fuel.
you pardon me, if I interrupt you there, because you mentioned a very important point, and I believe there's also a project that has either been signed or approved at the new Suez Canal for a clean environment area, where there's some kind of private companies coming in the docks of the ships to make sure that they are friendly to the environment. So to make it more clear, if you have coal, for instance, docking off coal from the ships won't be the same docks that you would use to dock off food products, for instance.
Definitely not.
Tell us about the importance of this, because this again is a very keen kind of project and initiative. And when people want to understand what does a friendly environment canal mean. So, and that costs a lot, as far as I'm aware of as well.
Right. Well, let me tell you first, if we talk about the air, there is now south of Cyprus and going all the way the latitude south of Cyprus, everything north of that latitude is called SECA, which is Sulfur Emission Controlled Area. It means that you are not able to use, you're not allowed to use a fuel that has more than 0.1% content of sulfur, because sulfur is a dangerous gas. When it's burned, it's sulfur dioxide, and sulfur dioxide is dangerous. So this is now SECA, it's still sulfur emission controlled area, and you are not allowed to use high sulfur content. The next step, when it comes to Egypt, Egypt is becoming now one of the mega producers of gas, or will soon become so. A lot of ships have started to convert their machinery, build up things like fit-in scrubbers, for example, to make sure that you have your sulfur, your exhaust is being properly cleaned before you dump it into the water. It's a process, of course. A lot of process, which is very expensive. The cheapest is gas. A lot of ships are now either dual fuel, so they can operate on fuel, or they can operate on gas.
Gas, all right.
Which makes a big difference. Now, where do they get the gas? The gas is not everywhere still. I mean, there are certain places, of course, with a lot of gas, but not so much. The best place qualified to be the gas hub for all shipping between north and south or east and west is Egypt, be it any Egyptian port or be the Suez Canal. We are qualified because we have our own production, and we will soon enough be exporting it. So instead of exporting it, we'll export it to ships. This is one example. The environment is extremely important because there has been a lot of talk about environment.
Of course, it seems like from the map that it's, and since it's a meeting point, we're going to have very heavy traffic over there. So you're going to have all kind of products and services being exchanged over there. So unless you have an environmental friendly docks, that's going to cause, I think, a problem.
It could, of course, but I think generally speaking now, it's not just Egypt. There are certain rules now. I am always enforcing a lot of rules. You get port state control, which is an authority that goes on board ships and makes sure that ships are running to certain standards. Class regulations are becoming more and more stringent all the time. So all these combined will help Egypt, intentionally or unintentionally, to actually comply and actually enforce and adapt to all this. Definitely. So that shouldn't be a problem. What we are developing in Egypt today, or what we should develop in Egypt today, is to see how we can fit in the Suez Canal with the Silk Route, with the new developments, with the new shipping services. Oh, this is the task of Project 675. That it is a means of building a skyscraper rather than a villa. We have a villa at the moment, but we have several villas. We have the Suez Canal Authority is a villa. We have the Suez Canal Zone is another villa. We have a third villa in the development of ports. No, what we are trying to do is combine all these small houses into a skyscraper. And if we succeed in our endeavors, and we can get the support, which we are getting from the Egyptian government so far, then what will happen is that we will have the biggest hub in the world when it comes to maritime transport.
All right, you've mentioned having, or the aim of having, the biggest hub in the world. So I assume that there's already a biggest hub in the world.
Yes.
Yes. And with your vast experience in traveling around, what is missing here for Egypt to have the biggest hub in the world?
We need to, forgive me for being so crude, but I would say if we use weapons of mass destruction against black red tape and against bureaucracy and against routines and against old rules which have been sitting there crippling anybody who wants to develop for years, this is what we need.
Yeah. So they are considered minor stuff. Why did I say that? Because going through the process of being the world's best maritime transport system, that would require a lot of money.
No.
No.
No. That's it.
Now, that is a piece of information a lot of people don't know or are not aware of.
Everybody would think, okay, fine, you want to create Egypt as the biggest hub in the world for maritime transport. You're going to be spending a fortune. Who's going to finance all that? Nobody, because you don't need that. Rail systems are there. All you need to do is use them, and use them properly. Okay, something is broken, we fix it. Personnel, people, but the people are there. What else do you need? Suez Canal, the Suez Canal is there. What we need is a regulation. We need the system. We need the infrastructure. We need the administration that will help put all those together. So instead of having little islands here and there, no, we have one big massive continent of services. If Singapore is turning $150 billion in revenues out of shipping services, this should, compared to Egypt, if Egypt actually goes up, it should be minor. We can beat that figure with our eyes closed, and if we go above that figure.
Yes. So as you said, maybe now that we are aware that it's not a financial sort of constriction, then Engineer Sherine, I'm sure that you're also aware that anything in the world that requires a new structure of a hierarchical or hierarchy of administrative restructuring would require companies. There's some international companies that's basically their jobs, anywhere in the world. So do you think that it's a bit difficult for them to get a foreign company that would be able to be specialized into restructuring the hierarchy of whether it's an administrative system or ending bureaucracy or whatever it is, to be able to reach that skyscraper point? Is this part of Project 675?
I think we need to look under our own feet. This is most important. We are actually trying to look forward at a distance, but we don't see that there are various stones. And I'm always being criticized that why do you always talk about problems? I say because problems are what stops everything. Let us first pave the road, and then we can not just walk, we can run. In fact, the president has mentioned and expressly said, no, we do not need even to run, we need to jump, which we do. And I would actually plead with the president to intervene in person to get this structure reorganized. He's got his systems, he's got his aides, he's got his personnel. That we need to get this system properly structured in such a way that we can develop Egypt as a major maritime country. Now you got ministries like the Ministry of Transport, you got the Ministry of Public Sector, you got the various ministries. And these ministries are all, each is working on his own track.
Oh, so you mean you need to interconnect and sort of have them all cooperate together to be able to resolve problems that belongs under their field, if I may say.
Not quite cooperate together, more like to be harmonized together. And there are certain rules and regulations, and the only authorized person who has the authority over everybody is the president. And as I said, I plead with him to intervene and build up this harmonical structure that will give Egypt the threshold to become the world's biggest maritime transport hub. And I am not being exaggerating there, and everybody I have worked with, be it in Egypt or abroad, have said that the potential in Egypt is phenomenal, and all you need to do is get your own act organized.
So going back again to Project 675, and I'm sure that it has short-term aims and long-term aims, or short-term vision, long-term vision. If you were to tell us briefly about what has it achieved since it started, or it has been established so far, what are your upcoming strategies or thoughts and aims that you have possibly under a timeline that you want to consider or achieve?
Oh, Project 675 has only been a few months old. It's not even a year old. And the first exploratory visit, which took place last month, has shown that, as I said, the potential is phenomenal. But again, it has shown that there is a lot of administrative problems that need to be addressed and need to be sorted out, because without that, we will have a problem. We will not be able to take off as quickly as we possibly can. As I say again, Egypt is the biggest transit hub in the world already. But how much money are we making out? How much are we benefiting out of it? 72 million Egyptian pounds? That's pocket change compared to the potential. Our potential is colossal. It's huge. The sky is the limit for Egypt.
And that's why I'm saying, if we can talk about the long-term plan or vision of once the industrialized economic zone is actually inaugurated and takes fully capacity potentials of 100% of work, once the flow of ships starts going in and out and everything is just very well coordinated, how much of revenues is expected to be made? Much more? Up to what level?
In my personal estimation, I would say if I was to handle a thing like this and give the Egyptian authorities or the Egyptian state $200 billion a year in revenues, then I am an amateur. I don't know my job, because the potential is much bigger than that. Egypt is 100 million people. It's stuck to Africa, and Africa, we are the head of the African Union now, which means that Egypt can be a very big hub for the African continent. We have the British on the other side. All the Project 65 consultants are British, and they are actually backed by their governments as well. The British government is extremely interested in developing Project 675 because of Brexit, and the British need to develop their existence with their Commonwealth partners. Now, by being linked between the continent and Egypt into Africa, then you are linking automatically Britain with its African Commonwealth partners. And then the next step is that when you bridge it across the Arabian Peninsula and you go to Pakistan, then you are linking the British Commonwealth Africa with the mainland and with the Asian Commonwealth.
That should be something very big to look forward to.
And exactly. Now, how much are we going to be making out of this? Count your millions, or billions rather.
Billions, yes, rather. And I hope you do change the name of the project, because it's very spooky by nature anyway. Our time is unfortunately up. I am very delighted that you've joined me today. Thank you very much, Engineer Sherine and Naggar, International Transport Consultant. That was very important information. I'm definitely going to remember this project forever. And of course, it is something very delightful to know that we're moving in very quick steps, and knowing the challenges, knowing exactly where your boundaries and obstacles are is always a good opportunity for you to be able to overcome them, of course. Right.
I can tell you one thing, I'm honored to be an Egyptian.
Definitely. Thank you. I said you looked German at the beginning. Remember, I said that. Thank you very much. Our time is unfortunately up. This brings us to the end of our episode of this evening. I'm Yasmin Bakir. I was filling in for my colleague Mona Mselhi this evening. Thank you very much for watching.